Hello?
Before we begin, this is Alan. The data that we've asked for that you'll get tomorrow about people, children, families there are with each of these scenarios. I think Lisa has already forwarded to you our request from the committee, but just to reiterate, we'd like to have those analyses on every scenario that we do, just without asking for it, just if you would inherently do those for us would be appreciated.
Sure, that's no problem. I can have that as part of the normal setup.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you want that done with the current students. If we're doing a high school, you want me to show 9-12 students. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I think our intent is that as we go through our process of high school, then middle school, and next week elementary schools, whatever scenarios we examine and kind of land on for comparison's sake, we'd like to have those data.
Okay. Just I want to clarify because I did the last analysis, for example, on the high schools. This is 2013 data, so it's a year-old data, and I'm assuming that this will, at the very earliest, these boundaries happen will be till next year. So that's 2 years. So your current 11th and 12th graders, since it's 2 years data, the 11th graders are now in 12th grade, and the 12th graders from last year now have graduated. So I did my analysis on 8, 9, 10, and 11 because those will be the 9 through 12th this year. Or actually,
yeah, I think we do go back to where we think we're going to be rather than where we are today, because you're right, those would not be relevant numbers necessarily.
Right.
And we know it's a very inexact science anyway.
yes.
Two other concerns that the committee has raised along the way is we need to be mindful of some of the special programs and magnet schools and their populations within the schools. And we probably need to pay closer attention, we think, to the free and reduced meal percentages as we go along. We've landed with the lines from last week in what many of us think might be an unsatisfactory answer to some of those schools. So we'll just keep moving forward on the process as we have. Ron, did you want to add anything?
I did. My request, you sent the high school scenario B that we landed on last week. You sent us the projected how many families would be affected. And, you know, our logic working through this, we started with 2 scenarios. The least, I forget what you call it, the least people impacted and
Fewest adjustments.
Plans, right?
Fewest
adjustments, I'm sorry. And the committee kind of wanted to start tinkering with the fewest adjustments, and that's how we ended up with this scenario B. But it occurred to me, you know, we don't know how many people were affected and how many families were affected by that fewest adjustment scenario and by the distributed free and reduced lunch scenario. So,
okay.
you know, I doubt this is the case, but it's possible that our scenario B we kind of landed on last week might actually disrupt more families than, say, the free and reduced lunch scenario, and then maybe we started with the wrong one. We just need that data.
Okay, I completely understand. And that's something I can get to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Scott, as a point of reference, the earliest that the high school boundaries would take effect would be the fall of 2017, because that's the year that the high school opened. So you may want to grow the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th graders forward.
Okay.
Oh, did you start with 7th?
Yeah, I did, but but since it's 2013 data, I should probably do 6th through 9th.
Right. And as it relates to the programs, at the high school, the conversation was that we have roughly 200 kids who move between each school. And that's why at the high school level, we kind of told you that we didn't need to worry as much about that. But as we enter the middle school level, there are several middle schools that a significant portion of their population comes through the magnet program. And so I think we need to definitely make sure we have that information handy. So if you can pull that matrix up for us so that as the committee is asking, we've got that data handy.
Will do. I'll get that up right now.
No, I said handy.
Okay.
I didn't call you Isaac.
No,
Okay.
what are you calling him?
Let's go first and ask him to do something.
Oscar, that's fine.
We do not see your screen right now, Scott.
Bill, did you sign it?
Alan,
Yes.
probably not tonight, but I think at some point soon we should set aside some time to talk about various scenarios of grandfathering. I think that could significantly impact some decisions that we're making. I can't imagine us coming out of this process and not recommending something.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that we really haven't discussed it in very broad terms at the very beginning. So maybe next week, we put it on the agenda to talk about how that might impact the decisions that we're making.
I'm perfectly happy to do that.
I had a question about that for Lisa last night, actually, as a matter of fact, because I had asked, I'm the one that asked for the information about the how many people it affected for the middle school scenario A, where they did just to follow the feeder patterns. And but I was looking at, like, from Hayes to Morton, there's 39 students moving from Hayes to Morton, but there's 102 coming back from Morton to Hayes. And my question was, the grandfathering, because, or will we move those kids in where they would start 6th grade, or are we looking to move that many, because you're kind of shuffling back and forth. So I would want to move that many kids in the middle of the school, but if we found a way to grandfather them in starting with 6th grade going up, then it would be less of an impact, and everyone would start where they would finish. And so that was my question about grandfathering. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Because that will affect, because, 39 from Hayes to Morton, and then 102 coming back from Morton to Hayes. That's just shuffling kids.
Right.
I know it's different areas, but anyway, but how we approach that will make a difference.
Now, I agree entirely that we need to discuss grandfathering, but I'm thinking that we're trying to make a long-term plan. The grandfathering is going to have a short-term impact. Maybe some schools will stay over capacity for a year or two that are currently over capacity to accommodate those families, but I think we need to have a plan that in the long term is going to be sustainable.
And that's 100% true. Most districts that, excuse me, that's 100% true. Most districts that I work with, they do have a short-term plan of just letting those students continue in the school they're at. They don't want to move them in the middle of their school experience, and the long term is what you're looking for. So yeah, I agree with that. That's something we definitely have to deal with. But again, most districts do let those students stay in the school they're currently at.
You're talking about elementary school, and you've got a kid in kindergarten, that's possible. And I guess I had a little bit of a concern, I don't know if you need to hear this, but Crawford was the only feeding middle school to the new high school. It's already over capacity at 130%, and that's a high growth area. So I feel like I thought our goal was to have 2 middle schools per high school. I don't know. But
We have 6 high schools and only 11 middle schools.
So if you're going to do a straight feeder pattern, there's going to be one high school that is only fed by one middle school.
I guess it's already 130% and that's a high growth area.
And that's only if we
Are you looking
do
at,
not split any of these areas.
you're looking at the draft scenario A?
Yeah.
We're definitely not at 130%.
No, that's within the
Okay.
scenario. Yeah, it had
If
it
we
at
follow
130% and this is it's very high growth.
I think all Scott did was take our high school scenario and see how we could.
I'm plopping on the map. Yeah.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, this is nothing more than just a starting point. Don't take it, with all respect to Scott, don't take it too seriously until we kind of wade through it.
Yes, and I like to give this too. In my opinion, I think that we ought to kind of mix the two. Just my opinion. Start with the current, but then look at the scenario with feeder patterns and move certain areas like we did last time. Just because of that, like I said, with Hayes Morton going back and forth. So maybe it'd be easier to look at the existing one and then look at the one that we call a feeder pattern and change as many of those areas as we could.
Okay.
Did we say we wanted to start by revisiting the high school?
Yeah, I would like us to do that based on an awful lot of public input that I got this weekend. A couple of our board committee members. I'm concerned. You want to walk us through this? You don't have to.
Well, I would just like to see what, I think it's hard for us to move forward if we're going to revisit the free and reduced lunch scenario where it's distributed even. So, I mean, because that changes. I just don't know if he's prepared to do it, but I would like to see what the middle school feeder pattern looks like fed into the free and reduced lunch scenario if we're going to revisit that.
Okay.
But I don't know if he's, prepared to do that tonight.
My overriding concern as I looked at it, and I've heard from other committee members as well as the public, is that what we landed on last week is really consistent with our goals, except for Lafayette being probably 8 percentage points on free and reduced meals under our stated goal of 38 or 39. But the bigger issue and problem is that Bryan Station remains essentially the same. I think it dropped from 62 to 61, am I remembering that correctly? Which, in concert, the 30 and the 61 don't look right to me. And so I thought we might want to take another look at that and see if there is another way. And I will be the first to acknowledge that redistricting very well may not answer this question. When you look at our maps and where people live, there are some things that are just going to be unavoidable without dramatic movement, busing or whatever it is. And I think we're all of a like mind that we want to limit that as much as we can. So we may or may not be able to fix that with redistricting, but we ought to at least take as close a look at it as we can.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now, so do we want to start on the high schools? I heard somebody ask that if I'm prepared to do anything. We can do any scenarios you want today. So, but I just need to know a place to start and where to go from.
Can you do a scenario with the free and reduced lunch high school scenario with a true middle school feeder pattern?
So take the distributed free and reduced lunch that I did last time and then do a high school or a middle school that matches up to those. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, just so we're on the same page, I'm bringing up first the original free and reduced distributed from from the very first time, the one that I created a few weeks back. So this is what that is. Make sure all the numbers seem to be where you want it. Now I will...
Hang on, Scott. Do you want the one that he originally started with, or do you want the one with your tweaks from the 23rd?
Oh, you probably want the one with the tweaks, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we already spent a lot of time getting to that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I think you call that like Fram A, maybe? If that helps you find it.
Yeah. Okay. So bring that in. I'm going to bring, this is a layer. Okay, so yeah, that matches up. Perfect. So now I'm going to go to, I created an MS scenario B, and so this will just take me a few minutes just to get these all lined up.
Oh, other scenarios. Okay, gotcha.
This is not going to work, I can tell right now. As you can see, we've got some boundaries that seem to be, some schools that are right on the high school attendance boundaries with this. And if you look at what I'm doing here, Morton's the only one in this whole area.
So a true feeder pattern won't work in that scenario?
It doesn't seem like it to me. Let's just, just finish this up here. It's almost done. But you could see something like, well, if you look at Bryan Station, which goes all the way from here to here, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 schools in that attendance area, 4 middle schools. You've got only 1 middle school in this attendance area. You've got your 2 here, which should work. But you've got this, would have to take some of this area, I would think, because Morton's going all the way down here. And you could see some of the numbers are getting big. Like Morton, look at it, 1,700 at this point. And I could take some away from it.
1,700. Well, I think that's acceptable, 1,700.
As long as the boundaries look nice.
Yeah. At the end of this, Scott, if I understand correctly, you can also give us some transportation numbers on that sort of thing, or am I wrong about that, Lisa?
Yeah, what do you mean by transportation numbers?
Well, I mean, in a scenario like that where we have to go basically south of Richmond to get our kids in Morton.
Like time traveled or miles traveled.
Right.
I can give you miles and time. I can't do any routing though. We don't do routing.
Yeah.
Well, if that's not going to work, you can go ahead and stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way.
Okay. We all agree this is not going to work?
Yeah.
We do.
Just to clarify, Scott, we started with the distributed free reduced meals high school area on this. That's what the overlay is here.
Yes, the one that you guys created.
Okay, thank you.
Even a true feeder pattern by zone, but you can put the current feeder pattern in that map as well, right?
Yes.
Scott, can you put the current high school boundaries in there too?
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now. So those are the current high school boundaries. In fact, let me go back to the other map here. And we'll go back to middle school. I'm sorry, did you say current high school or current middle school?
Can you do both?
Yes.
One in color and one in with a line?
Okay, so here's your current middle school with current middle school lines. And then you want to see your current high school areas. Okay, so let me turn this off. So now the shaded areas are your current high schools. And the lines are the current middle school attendance areas. So you do have a lot of So, for example, Lafayette's split between 3 different middle schools. Bryan Station's between 1, 2, 3, 4 different middle schools. Let's see how this. Do you want to see?
Scott,
Yes.
could you give us the free, based on exactly what we're looking at right now, with Bryan Station having 4 feeder schools, could you give us the new free and reduced lunch number at Bryan Station High School, just based on that?
These are current.
This is
boundary
current.
maps.
This is all current boundaries.
This,
So that's
well,
60%.
okay, so it's still at 60%.
Right now, they're
Right
at
now, this is
60.
the current map.
This is
we have
current,
today.
current.
I got you, okay.
So basically, we don't have a whole much pattern right now anyway. So that's right.
Right.
And the other thing is that as much as on a free and reduced lunch scenario, it looks like Bryan Station is huge. It's huge now.
Now, what I have up here now is your scenario B attendance areas, which are the, I'm sorry, never mind. Hold on. Never mind. There we go. No. Okay, so now this is current slide, current scenarios. Okay.
Like that?
Yeah.
Well, and even
Okay, I have a question.
Okay.
Is there any way we can see, just for a starting point, before we just move a lot of kids, if we could start with the preliminary, the map that we did last time, that we ended with, we know we're going to make changes to that, but can we see that with the current middle school attendance areas now, so maybe we can move sections of it. So that way we're not just moving a bunch of kids that fit the feeder pattern, we're actually targeting areas to move instead of moving them back and forth.
Okay. So you want,
Scenario D was a high school, the one that we ended with last time.
right.
That's the second map, actually.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, yes, the draft.
Yes. That's with the scenario B high school with current middle school.
Okay, does that have both of them in? Okay. Sorry. But if we could have it with the different, well, we don't have the section. I guess we have to look at this map to find the section.
This here is the current, or scenario B high school. The shaded areas, the lines are the current middle school.
The high school and then the middle school.
So, like,
So this is the amendment to that.
high school map, this is what it looks like with the current middle school stuff. Right now, like Lafayette, we get a little bit of Belmont, a little bit of Mystic Clark, a little bit of work, a little bit of like we get a Ford, a little bit of Crawford, TJ, LA, EJ, and a little bit of Dixon.
So I know you guys wanted to revisit the high schools first, though, to do the free and reduced. Did you want to continue working on the high schools and then we can then go back to the middle schools? I understand what you're saying about looking at this and taking just chunks, but we're looking at the middle schools that we're going to change anyway, so we don't know what we're going to change, so what chunks should we go at, if you understand what I'm saying. I think we should maybe tweak our high schools a little bit more, get to something we feel solid from there, and then go and tweak our middle schools.
The only suggestions I was looking at making is a free and reduced lunch high school scenario. And I don't have a study area for math, but I was looking at taking Leestown and making it a true boundary sending those kids to the south side of Leetown or those study areas to Dunbar. And that might alleviate some of the numbers out of Bryan Station.
I think
And then,
we tried that.
we tried that last week,
you know, try that.
and I don't think it,
I mean, not to the free and reduced lunch scenario. We tried it with the fewest adjustments.
did we? I remember.
And then the neighborhood is down at this corner,
What are you starting with, Jay?
starting with the free and reduced lunch scenario.
Oh, you're looking at the,
We're not even looking at
I thought we agreed that that didn't work with the middle school, that we weren't going to start from that.
that. Yeah, I thought we were working on our high school.
Yeah, because that one didn't work with the middle school.
Yeah, well, it didn't work with a true feeder pattern in middle school. But if we decide what middle schools feed into what high schools, then we can make it work. But I thought we were going to look at that one because that's the one that evened out the numbers better as far as capacity and as far as free and reduced lunch throughout the county.
It didn't even out the capacity, though. That's why we went with the scenario B.
Scenario B.
We kind of decided that free and reduced map was not workable, so we went back to the fewest adjustments. That's
Right.
where we started making tweaks last week, and that's when we looked for the scenario B. This is probably where we need to build from.
I think so, too.
I think we build from scenario B also.
So as a committee, we're acceptable with Bryan Station that being at 60%.
No, but we want to make the changes from this map. We don't want to undo everything we've done. We want to make whatever changes to this map instead of going to the whole different map that we kind of did for last time. So from this map, we need to make the adjustments.
Yeah, but won't the high schools, the middle schools that we feed into the high schools won't be based on that scenario B map, right?
But whatever changes we make to, that's what we're going to do is make more changes to this to work on the free and reduced lunch. And the two that we really need to look at is the Lafayette and the Bryan Station are the two that we're looking at.
Just saying. But I think we have to make more changes to that scenario B map.
But that's what we're talking about.
That's what we're going to,
at.
yeah, that's where we're going to start now. This is your free and reduced map. We've got the 61 and 39%, and that's what we want to start tweaking and looking at. If I got that right.
Right.
The question is, are there contiguous areas with, say, Dunbar, Lafayette, and Bryan Station that can be moved from one school to the other that will reduce the free and reduced lunch population Bryan Station and make it more balanced at Lafayette? I know we played with a lot of scenarios.
So we probably need to look in this area, kind of where Lafayette and Bryan Station, each if we can find something. And we,
I feel like we moved it all over.
Yeah. It seems like with that scenario B map, we're dealing with four problems. Where if we started with the free and reduced lunch, we don't have as many adjustments that we're going to make because I mean the schools are more balanced and the free. They're not.
No, they were not even close to balance.
we try that.
That's why we scrapped that map.
What were the four problems with this?
I thought we scrapped that map because people said there were
Title
too
one
much busing.
concern.
Well, and there's too much busing,
Numbers
too.
were-
The numbers didn't really help much.
It had lots of problems.
And I was at constructed 3 times as many.
Well, that's why I asked for that data, and we haven't got it
Right.
yet. So we don't know that.
I mean, we spent a lot of time building a scenario B. I mean, I think that's what we're on.
We don't want to undo it.
They
Going
wasted
with
a
it.
lot of time building this scenario.
I think we want to do it right, not if that means taking longer. I don't know that that's the way to go, but I just think it's worth considering.
Well, I don't understand why we can't go from this one. I mean, it's cheap from our current.
Literally, it's
We
got
worked
3
on it.
meetings working on this map.
I think you can move forward with that map, but you also need to see the factor that you mentioned. So that when people do ask, why did you not consider this scenario, what the transportation, what work it costs? You need to have that information other than just saying, you don't want to do that scenario. You want to make sure you back that up with what it costs.
Well, we haven't been considering that at all yet, and I'm not sure that we should, because we don't have that data anyways. You know, again, this is all preliminary. We're trying to, you know, move the hay in the bag around a little bit, but we're ultimately going to have to come back and retweak on any number of issues, special programs, transportation mileage, all all sorts of different things are going to have to be revisited. But, you know, I'm not so sure we want to get bogged down in things that we don't even have data about yet. Disagree, Doug? You're looking at me quizzically.
Yeah, I was just curious as to whether we can get, how quick we could get some data on like transportation and things like that. I mean, under whatever scenario we choose.
Don't we have the resources to do that?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Scott, how quickly can you get us miles traveled in both of our scenarios?
It would have to be 3 scenarios, because then you would want to compare it to the current scenario as well.
Okay, it would be miles traveled, but miles traveled from where to where?
Yeah, good point.
Are you guys wanting the furthest miles traveled from the furthest point to the school?
I wouldn't be looking at that, Lisa. I would be. If we're going to go through this exercise, I think it ought to be an aggregated number of miles traveled.
Okay, we have our routing
We got to
guru, and I hate to put him on the spot, but Marcus, is there anything that you could do to help integrate these?
No, unfortunately, because if you take it, for example, look at it as a rule.
Hang on, talking to Mike.
Some of our routes that when we run into the rural parts of the county, it may take us about an hour and a half to just grab 20 kids. So until the scenarios are bogged down, that's when then we could go through and kind of tweak, because we don't know where the students are as they move from year to year, and then we have to go out and add in bus service. So that's up to you all, but I would really say it's probably the only thing that you should probably just consider the total number of miles, but how long the ride times are going to be, that's hard to predict.
And Marcus, what's the average route for a school bus to take in?
Well, it kind of depends. If you're talking about inner city, then you're probably talking about the kids are on the bus probably for about like 20 minutes, and on average, I would say each bus travels in the city limits probably about 60 total miles a day, roughly. Or when you get out into the rural parts, that sometimes we do have to go out into the rural parts, those routes become extremely long.
Okay, and you're going to routes for all 3 levels too, right? Middle school, elementary,
Yes,
and that complicates things too.
very much so.
So, do we want to ask Scott to go through this exercise now?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Everybody feel that strongly about it, Ron?
I just would, we had a question, if we're going to, if so many of you are wedded to the scenario B tweaked, Scott has, I can't, my old eyes can't see red and green across the room, which of these study areas have higher free and reduced lunch or not. My question again, are there contiguous areas between Lafayette, Bryan Station, and Dunbar that we move from one to the other to change those free and reduced lunch distributions? From scenario B, you've got the data right in front of you.
And you know what? That's what I'm doing right now, and I don't know. I might not have good symbols for you to show that. Let me actually do something real quick.
But let me just point this out to Ron. I think this is an important point, one to which I alluded earlier. But more specifically, our current attendance areas at Bryan Station, we're at 2,128 kids, 114%, with 60% free and reduced. In scenario B that we have before us, we have reduced capacity by a third, down to 1,500, and yet, moving all of those hundreds and hundreds of kids, we haven't changed the free and reduced lunch percentage at about, it's 1%. So, you know, what I said earlier is, you know, redistricting may not cure everything here. We are bound by some logical conclusions that have to do with geography and where people live and you know, where they want to live, those sorts of things. We just may not be able to cure everything, I'm afraid.
I understand that. I'm just saying, have we moved the right 600 kids?
Well, I don't know. That's a fair enough question.
not sure how we.
I can ask that question on any decision we make, though. I don't think it's an answerable question.
I don't know if we can do it.
I have a couple of.
What I've got here, let me show you what I've done, because I've been playing around while you guys are talking. These dark shaded areas are less than 50% free and reduced. I've moved all the ones that are adjacent to Bryan Station into Bryan Station, and I was able to get it down to about 59-41 rounding issues. So again, there's no other free and reduced unless I take this, but that would leave this as a pocket of over 50%. There's no other free and reduced that's less than 50% study areas that are currently adjacent to Bryan Station.
So the only way to fix that would be the bus. Is that what you're saying?
In scenario B.
In scenario,
Scenario A, you had it going all across the county. The other one, basically, the whole county was busing up to Bryan Station.
But it's almost the same footprint that it is now, the current footprint for Bryan Station.
No.
You're cutting it in half for the new high school.
I mean, the high school is still in the free and reduced lunch scenario A, right? Is there, I mean, just to satisfy me, and I don't want to do it at anybody's expense or time.
No.
Is there any way that we can move some study areas and see how that looks?
Sure.
In the free and reduced lunch scenario?
I think
What he's doing
No,
That's what he's doing now.
Doing it to scenario B.
He wants to go back to the one we didn't start with last time. Study areas terrifying.
I thought we kind of already determined that map didn't work.
Under what
some
basis
folks
did we
said it
determine
didn't
that didn't work?
Well, I mean, we had a meeting last time where most of the cards came back green. It wasn't.
I hate to say it, I was the only one that came back red.
Okay.
Try again, I'll explain it. Evidently, 2100 and 1400 is not computed for some reason.
But that's in scenario B.
That's in scenario B, right?
I mean, but we haven't, and I apologize, I missed
You
the
want to put
Dunbar meeting.
2128 kids in Bryan Station and then go from there?
No, that's
No,
not
it's 18,
intended.
it's
That's not what
1800, it's 1800 kids in Bryan Station, and go from there. I mean, is that doable?
I think it is. And I think that exercise is worthwhile to do right now because I hope, Scott, are you following this?
I'm following it.
So we're going backwards.
This form shows there's 2,128 kids at Bryan Station now, not 1,800.
Is that the current?
Current, yeah.
Current?
Yeah, I'm looking at draft distributed free.
Right here.
Just like scenario A.
He's talking about a different scenario, about the other scenario that we did not start with last week.
Do you have that, Scott?
I do. I was just kind of playing around here. Okay.
Yeah, but I guess I'm looking at it on this page. I didn't find it in the same.
I still don't think it's going to. I honestly don't think we're going to be able to do anything much, but we
Okay,
can
so
try.
last time, if you guys have the things we handed out last time, we gave a draft risk adjustment scenario A and a draft distributed free and reduced lunch meal scenario A.
Which one?
And I think that James was asking us to pull up the one that was the draft distributed free and reduced lunch meal scenario A, which had Bryan Station with 1,788 students.
And that's what I have up right now.
Okay.
I couldn't get that one.
Okay. It's the one that you sent before you went out of town last week. and it's labeled Distributed Free and Reduced Lunch Meal Scenario A.
Yes. That is the one, that's the one I have currently up. That is the one that you guys tweaked for my distributed free and reduced lunch.
Yes, that is the one that the committee tweaked. It's where they left off on the end of the October 23rd meeting.
Right.
And it had Bryan Station at 49%, Henry Clay at 40%, Lafayette at 36%, Dunbar at 33%, the proposed high school at 49%, and Tate's Creek at 41%.
Correct, and that's what is showing on the screen right now.
Lunch. But our capacities, we felt were going to all fall short within a year or two with, I got it.
Oh, you got it, okay.
All our capacities are about at 100 there. And so that leaves us virtually no growth except for the new high school.
Well, my concern was the transportation because people in this area, I mean, you're going all the way over to here, and there's two working parents, and I will speak for myself, but anyone, you're going past, there's three close high schools, and you're going all the way across town. And so transportation was my concern with this one. I don't mind the free and reduced lunch, it's the transportation.
Some of the study areas, I was going to see if it would work to move those to the new high school.
So are you, see, because the black line on this map is the current Bryan Station High School number. So from here, they're already going to Bryan Station. So the addition was from here to the green, that green mountain. So is that where you're talking about, James? Moving some of these areas to the new high school?
And see what happens?
Yeah.
Some of it. Right. Let's see. I have to see what study area. The back of this map is high school study area. Okay.
So you look in this area?
But see, my only concern with that is anything past Winchester Road because you're passing the school to go to the school. Is there any way we could cut it off like Winchester Road either? That way you're not going past the new school. But that's where the new school is going to be. That's my only concern. Got it.
Yes.
Is it possible to find if you could please, I know that this is something that you're all very concerned about and we love that you're here, but our community is having a little bit of a hard time hearing each other as well.
Okay.
Is it possible to figure out how many people are disrupted by scenario A in the high school? Or was that something that we needed to wait until tomorrow to get?
That's something I'm getting you tomorrow.
Okay. I didn't think for anybody to go and pass that.
Okay, this is looking at the distributed scenario A. Was this the area that you wanted to see about moving back into the proposed high school?
Is that right, Jay?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
So there was about 300 students in that area.
Doing it now.
But let's see what it does to, so it brings these up to, Bryan Station down to 78% and the proposed up to 88%. Let's see what it does to our free reduced. I think it was at 59% if I remember.
Was that 41, Scott?
41, I'm sorry. Well, the other way is 59.
You're correct, Matt Geek.
So now it is at 56 free reduced, 44 paid.
What is it? What do you say, 56?
He says it's 56% free and reduced lunch with that change. Henry Clay is 40. Lafayette is 36. Dunbar is 33. The proposed high school is 42. Tate's Creek is 41.
So it made Bryan Station worse.
Yes, pulling that out took Bryan Station from 41 to 56.
But not worse than it is currently. Better than scenario B.
It's still better than scenario B. But you're also disrupting a lot more kids.
We don't know that.
Yeah, we do. You gave us 2 vans.
That's the data we can't get till tomorrow.
Now, what about moving study areas?
Okay, guys, I don't want us to lose focus here. Let's all stay on the board. Okay?
And what if we put study area 45, 47, 191, and 192 in the Dunbar? So that's all Bryan Station.
Move them into Dunbar. Wait and see.
These 4 here?
Yes.
From a free reduced, it keeps it about the same.
He had asked for 43 and 44 as well, Scott.
So it brings it up to 57%.
Moves it the wrong direction.
And then I don't say the areas are real.
But they're wild.
It could go down here.
Hello? Okay.
Are we waiting on Scott?
No, I think he's waiting on that.
I am waiting on you guys. I am checking something else, though.
Did we move that last group that James just asked to move?
Yep, went up 1 point.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. Pay attention.
By the way, folks, it's 10 till 6, so let's keep moving forward. You're not making much progress today. So do we have a consensus thought about these changes, whether they are worthwhile for us?
I think as much work we put in, very little failure before we try to achieve it.
Well, our best case is what, reducing us from 61 to 56 or 5?
56. That was set 7 now, with it's 56. Can you show us what the school capacities look like again?
Sure can. Brings the new high school, or Dunbar, up to 1927. Bryan Station to 1396. Proposed to 1457. So Bryan Station would be 1396, Henry Clay 2011, Lafayette 2047, Dunbar 1927, proposed 1457, and Tate's 1991.
That's even taking Bryan Station down 1,100 students from what it is now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And reducing the free and reduced from 61 to 57. That's 11 students we're impacting there. I think those numbers speak for themselves, right? I go back to the facts to make an impact. David, what do you think?
Alan, to your point on whether or not we can completely resolve the free and reduced, the one direction that we were given by Superintendent Shelton was that we're not here to talk about special programs. Those are off the table. Is it possible that flip-flopping a Spanish immersion and a SCAPA program between those two schools would significantly change these numbers? Do they have to be completely off the table?
I don't have authority to answer that question, frankly.
Well, I feel like with a special program, you have to have special classrooms. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. I would assume housing a program. And I think for us, lay people, I don't feel comfortable saying, oh, well, we're going to move.
No, I don't either, but I think it might be worth the question. If we're looking at a scenario here where we cannot address the free and reduced situation by redistricting, I think what are some things that can be addressed?
Well, I think that, first of all, is probably above our pay grade. Which, right, well, we do get soda pops. I also think, David, that that's not maybe swapping programs is not the right idea, but perhaps adding new programs to certain schools might be attractive. And in fact, the program that we have at Bryan Station right now, the IT program, if that became a magnet program, that might attract a few hundred kids all by itself. And we're really not changing anything, right?
And under our scenario B, we're leaving a significant amount of capacity at Bryan Station.
Yeah.
Where you could do that.
I mean, but I don't know that that's a recommendation that we're charged to make.
No, it might not be, but it might make some of us feel a little bit better about making a recommendation to leave Bryan Station the way it is if we know that there are ways that the board can.
Well, fellas, we just had a couple of school board members at this table that could help us out with this conversation.
I'm open to any out-of-box ideas.
I agree, I'm open to any.
So I think having heard 40% of the school board talk to us, I think that's a possibility that we might make some, let's call them tangential recommendations during and at the end of our process. They say they'd be comfortable hearing it, so it might give us more comfort. You're right. Right. I'm speaking for all of us, probably not, but I'm seeing a lot of nods.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I know.
So
Okay.
I went in here. Okay, go ahead.
Well, we've got 35 minutes left.
Alan, I think Scott just did something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. What I went in is like what I was trying to do before. This is that original free and reduced A. I went in, and these dark black lines are less than 50%. Study areas are less than 50%. So I took those study areas that are adjacent to Bryan Station now, currently, and I moved them into Bryan Station. And I've got it down to 55% free and reduced. And the actual numbers of students in there are also under the capacity to 1,400.
Can you tell us how many students are impacted for that?
I can once we settle something and I change it. I can't right now. I mean, what do you mean? Do you mean impacted from A or impacted from what it is currently?
From what it is currently, I'm trying to see how many kids that were actually moving.
Right, and that's something I'm going to be able to do after the meeting and get to you guys the next day. And from each subsequent meeting, whatever we decide on, whatever scenario we decide on, I'll be able to do that analysis after the meeting. It does take some time.
And if we get that, we'll have it the day after, Scott, which gives us almost a week to kind of chew on it.
Correct.
Great. And Lisa, that would go up on the website for the public to take a look at as well. Okay.
What are the red lines right now?
The red lines are the current attendance areas. You know, this one to me, I never liked this one from, it's very gerrymandered really, because all I was trying to do is get that free and reduced lunch down. You know, you've got students from here that are going up to here. You've got students pretty far from their schools going to a school far away.
Yeah, what I didn't like about it.
Yeah, it's gerrymandered. It's not nice, concise, that makes sense. I understand what we're trying to do here, but it also is maybe not the best. And it's something definitely I would like your transportation department to look at to see, okay, wait, this is going to cost us X number of dollars if we do something like this.
And I think, too, if we listen to a lot of the feedback that we've gotten, the community isn't necessarily in favor of this either, because everything that we've read has said, you know, we don't want to go past all of these schools, and that's certainly not what would happen in this scenario.
Yeah.
Zoom in a little bit and kind of see what we're looking at. You read these feedbacks.
I guess one of my questions is if we go into a scenario that requires a lot of transportation, we get figures back from transportation, and at some point the board says we can't fund that. Then how much further behind the 8 ball will we be?
Alan, I think that irrespective of whatever the scenario is, there's going to have to be some additional consideration given to Bryan Station. I mean, the fact of the matter is we either got to bus kids a long distance, which is going to cost. We're going to have a high percent, in order to reduce the percentage of kids who are receiving free reduced lunch. What it appears is there's a high concentration of poverty in the specific area. So either we're going to have to bus kids a long distance, and it's going to cost, or there needs to be a commitment that part of our recommendation is that additional funding be provided to Bryan Station in light of the fact that there is a significant percentage of the kids on free or reduced lunch. I mean, at some point we're going to have to pay. It's either going to be paid as transportation costs in busing, or it's going to be paid in additional funding on a per pupil expenditure basis. So I think that we just have to come to the reality. And I appreciate what you were trying to do on moving kids around, but the fact is, no matter what scenario we've chosen, it seems to get below 55%.
On the children, money and resources at school in the first place, and directly impact the kids.
Well, and I think we've discussed, I mean, equity doesn't always mean equal funds. So if Bryan Station needs more funds, I think that's the direction we
These are good points.
and I feel like that's the direction that we're moving.
Thanks, Bill. See much head nodding one way or the other. Well, let's talk about now. We've got a half hour. Let's begin a conversation about feeder patterns and see where we can move the ball down the field a little bit. I believe we're going back to high school scenario B. Seems to continuing to be our consensus play. So what Scott has given us is suggested feeder patterns. Let's start with our thoughts about that.
There's a couple of thoughts. Leestown is 81% free. Bryan Station 76%.
Well, remember, we're reducing the size of our populations, so our fluctuations in these percentages for free and reduced lunch are going to be more sensitive to neighborhoods and areas of town than they are in our high school. Of course, it's going to make it more difficult. What I think I'm trying to say is that we have to change our tolerance meter here a little bit, and we'll find that even more next week as we drop down to discussion of elementary school.
Alan, I'd like to go back to pointing out with this too, what I said earlier, looking at the current ones and making changes, and looking at the one that's feeder pattern and making changes. With the one that follows the feeder patterns, you're shuffling a lot more students because, like I said, you had 39 going from Hayes to Morton and a different 102 coming from Morton to Hayes. So I think that we should start with the current and make the changes that will adjust it to the feeder pattern, is what I think.
I have no objection to that. To start rather than scenario B,
Start with the current, make changes.
start with current.
Then move it to what?
And make the changes from that map.
Does that
Did
make
you see-
sense? I mean, does that negate any of the work that
Did you
we've
see
done?
the information that I requested from Lisa with where the students are moving to? If we, okay, and that's what I'm looking at. Like I said, if you look here, you're moving 39 students from Hayes to Morton and a separate 102 from Morton back to Hayes. So you're shuffling a lot of kids to come up with 50 kids different. So if we started with the current and move the pockets that will go towards the feeder patterns, what I think we should do.
So you're saying the feeder patterns aren't really that as important?
No, I'm saying that.
I'm just trying to, I'm not advocating for this middle school scenario A that the feeder patterns are the problems it presents. But if we think feeder patterns are important, that the kids that go to the same middle schools go to the same high school, then there's going to be some of that shifting between one in and out, keep neighborhoods and elementary school kids together in middle schools and so on.
Yes, but I'm not saying not changing to the feeder pattern, but the starting point is where I'm just.
The starting point is where they're at.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That is the starting point. It's just a matter of how we want to proceed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Start with this map as opposed to the other one. And tweak it.
I have no objection to that. That makes better sense to me, frankly, than what I said.
Okay, when you say start from this map, do you want to start from the middle school current scenario, or current boundaries?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And with that high school map that we just had, that we decided on.
Okay.
Okay, guys, have at it.
I don't know how many kids are impacted on this, but an obvious place, it looks like an obvious place is between Beaumont and Jesse Clark. There's areas that we traded between the two that would align them with the high school, align them with Dunbar. On the far southern corner in the Jesse Clark Middle School area.
I had it.
If I may interrupt, I would like for us to know as a committee what middle school, what magnet, what capacity we go in looking at the current model. For example, my school, Bryan Station Middle School, has 417, but that doesn't take into account the 189 Spanish immersion schools Spanish immersion students that I'm getting from Maxwell and Liberty. So I'm built for 800. I've got 622 kids in the building right now. You're looking at a piece of paper that says 417. So my first question is, the magnets that our board recognized, where they are, what the populations are, as we continue our conversation for middle schools.
Why don't we have those true numbers in? These are true capacity.
We do, they're in the matrix. He didn't change the capacity of the building to reflect how many magnet schools are in there, partially because some of it we control. For example, LTMS has a capacity of 733 students, and right now there are 254 resident students there, because we put about, tell me if I'm wrong, about 60% or 70% in there from the magnet program. Which is it?
Well, it's between 16 and 17.
Okay. Bryan Station Middle School has a Spanish immersion program that is growing, because in the past, before this year, it was fed only by Maxwell. This year, it's being fed by Maxwell and Liberty for the first time. So we have 6th graders there for the first time.
And there's 205 of those, from 417 to 622. Is that what I heard?
To be exact, I've got 189 immersions.
And how many of them are in 6th grade?
102.
So then next year, he'll have 102 7th graders,
Right.
and possibly 102 6th graders.
He's going to have 350 kids 3 years from now.
Well, and that doesn't even account for the fact that next year, Northern begins feeding 6th grade.
See, this is really critical.
It is.
And we need to be thinking about this impact before we even begin our process.
Right. And so Bryan Station Middle School, Lexington Traditional Middle School, Winburn Middle School has the magnet program. How many kids are there, Bob?
About 175.
And then Tates Creek Middle School, would that be about the same, Bob?
It's a little larger. More like 200.
Okay. So Scott, we need to move the capacity of Tates Creek Middle School down to 700.
Okay.
We need to move the capacity of Winburn down to 700, maybe a little lower. Yes.
The 4 that we've mentioned so far, are those the ones that this district recognized?
Yes, sir.
And
And at the middle school level, there are no other magnets.
are those 4 that the district recognized? Why?
Yes.
So it is something we want to pull from the total building capacity.
If we are committed to leaving the programs where they are, then yes.
What we're doing today, what we're doing this year, how long-term is it? How far into the future are we looking before we come back to the table on year 2?
The guiding principle says, what, we're in the 5 or 7-year solution. And the other thing that's not in the mix right now is that the facilities plan calls for 1 more middle school. Now, last time I made a statement, and I think it was misinterpreted by some members of the community, because we got a Let's Talk comment on it. I wasn't saying that you don't have to address middle schools. Of course you have to address middle schools. But we're not building a middle school right now. We are building 2 new elementary schools. We're building 1 new high school. That's the driving reason that we pulled this committee together. But we do know that sometime in the future, a middle school is needed. And we're hoping that Scott will be able to help us to identify what part of town that would be needed in. David's folks have been amazing. They've worked with the folks from the city, and we're supposed to get those numbers tomorrow to help us with the growth factors. And so that'll help us to get projected numbers for the
Well, the
future.
squishy question there, Lisa, is will that middle school, do we anticipate it being built in that 5 to 7 year window?
Ms. Browning, right?
We need to check. One of the concerns for them right now is, hang on, Mary, can hear you.
I would say that quite possibly we would have another elementary school and a middle school, probably closer to 7 than 5, but yeah, probably in that time range.
So that might accelerate this renewed process sooner than we might imagine.
To at least deal with those particular schools, probably much like we did when we opened Liberty and Aiken Chelmsford. So not a massive change.
Do we have a school at Aiken Chelmsford?
Bob had a good point that I want to share. The magnet program at Bryan Station Middle School is driven by demand. The kids enter Spanish immersion in kindergarten, and it's the choice their parents make from 5th going into 6th grade whether to continue on. The magnet program at Winburn and the magnet program at Tates Creek are gifted and talented clusters, and so when we have students who qualify for those programs, if we had 300 students who made the threshold, we would have to make room for them because we have to serve them. At LTMS, it's up to us as a district how many people we accept. Lexington Traditional Magnet School. It's a traditional magnet school, and there's a whole lot that goes into that. But so if you guys said that you were going to fill Lexington Traditional Magnet School with 50% residence area, we just would take fewer magnet students. Whereas at Bryan Station Middle and Winburn and Tates Creek, that is a much more hard number that we should go ahead and probably deduct from the capacity.
So are you kind of
based on where they live. Marcus is raising another really important thing to explain to you guys. Kids who qualify for the Gifted and Talented program at the middle school level, if they choose to go to Winburn or choose to go to Tates Creek Middle School, based on where they live, and roughly, cut the county about this way. So students who live up here and qualify for the program go to Winburn, and students who live in the southern half of the county and qualify go to Tates Creek Middle.
Just to make sure that I understand what you just said correctly. Since if the demand is there for Spanish immersion, we make those slots available. We kind of don't have a set slot or a set number of seats in each school for each program. Is that right? It's kind of like a moving target.
I can project based on who's in 3rd grade, 5th grade. I can project my numbers pretty accurately. And I have history as to how many kids have been coming and how many kids have been coming. So there's 80 kids at Maxwell. There's 50 kids at Liberty. There's 30-something kids at North. And what I've been doing about 60% at one school, 80% at another school.
But in theory, you're going to have to leave some capacity in those schools for those kids.
Yeah.
So we need to deduct that out of it.
And that makes it a little more difficult.
Yeah.
My next question is, Winburn, we have, like I know mine historically what my averages are. Do we have that data so we can say, yeah, we're going to make the performance average rule of thumb number? We can get it. I don't have that in front of me, but yeah, we can get that easily.
So do you think we do that and then subtract that out of capacity is what we probably should do then?
If you look at the matrix number, this was handed out several meetings ago, but there's a big matrix, the big 11 by 17, and you have some for elementary, some for middle, and some for high. There should be a number in there that shows us how many were there last year through the magnet. Yeah, that's the one exactly.
But that says how many were not area students. It doesn't necessarily mean how many are math.
Okay, so they might be there through magnet, and they might be there through another area.
Yeah, and actually I was going to ask you about that. With the next set of student data I get, since there are magnet schools at certain boundary schools, magnet programs, can we have those somehow notated so I can, actually separate those out so you could see how many are Bryan Station just regular, how many are Bryan Station magnet, et cetera, et cetera. So there has to be something notated that I could tell, you know, where the students are coming from or what program they're in.
You have that, Scott? It's in the reason code in the big student information
Okay.
class.
Okay.
And then I sent you the guide that explains what each of those reason codes is.
Perfect.
Let me know if you need me to re-upload that.
No, I'm sure I have it. So on the next for the 2014-15 student matrix, I'll have those pulled out like these schools, which are magnet program schools. And so you'll be able to see that. And it might make it a little bit clearer.
Okay, it's about 6:15. Do you guys want to give Scott some direction?
Well, first and foremost, let's change these capacities so that we know what we're really looking at. And we'll go from there. Lester's points are really on point. I don't know where to go from here. I'm at the pleasure of the committee.
I have a question. How hard would it be to, as far as the middle schools go, can we break this down in smaller areas based on the current ones so we can see what would be easier to shift, like with numbers? Am I making myself clear? Not really.
No, I don't understand.
Try again, Sam.
I know. Okay, so if we're looking at, if we start with the current middle schools and then the scenario we come up with for the high schools, I know some of them are fairly easy, like if we wanted to move this number or whatever, but can we have like smaller, I guess something to go with it that shows if we move this area, it's this many kids. And that way we go through the feeder pattern and see what we can move to make it fit the feeder pattern more, and we know how many students we are moving in smaller amounts.
So you're asking to have some study areas and there's
Yes.
capacity overlaid onto this
Yes.
map
Yes.
here?
So we can go towards the feeder pattern with smaller numbers, so, you know, we can start moving it around and getting closer to the feeder pattern without displacing any more kids than we have to. Does that make sense? Okay, okay,
But we have the big one.
okay.
I
Well-
can make a copy of the big one for each committee member.
Well, we can just put it online, and Scott can zoom in and zoom out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it,
Okay.
and it's
Yeah,
Well-
that's
you
fine.
guys have the map.
We don't need any more. We
Okay.
don't need that map,
Okay,
with all respect, but we need that data.
right,
Okay.
right.
And you've got
Right.
the chart right now. The chart, the spreadsheet has the data, and the big chart that you can zoom in and out of tells you the numbers that go
That's
with
the
it.
one.
Let me just say this to the committee. All the maps that we had last week, that were all on foam core, laminated with multiple overlays, are not inexpensive. And they take us almost a week to generate. That's one of the reasons we've moved away this week from those. You know, I don't think I'm letting any secrets out, but it's a lot of money and a lot of time, and it's ever changing anyway. So I sort of participated in an executive decision to try to move away from that medium if we could. Okay.
He's doing this now, Henry. That's kind of what you were asking for.
Yes, but as long as we can work it on the computer, that's fine. I was just thinking we could take smaller segments to move, to work towards the feeder pattern without doing big chunks and a large amount of kids, maybe having to break it down a little bit more.
Well, to get
Scott,
the
a small question. What can you tell me about study area 197?
I could tell you anything you want to know, but what are you looking for?
There. Here's the big thing.
Okay.
And the percentage of free and reduced. We got it.
You say 197?
Here that's perfect. 9 students.
2 free and reduced.
Thank you. All right, anyone else, other questions?
Could I request a scenario that Scott maybe could work on and we could take a look at it for the next meeting?
Well, anybody else could, David,
But not me.
but not you. I appreciate that.
We had talked a little bit about taking a significant, let's say, geographic area that's high percentage free and reduced lunch and moving it into the new high school. Taking it out of Bryan Station, moving it into the, what if we did that and then set aside an area for development that we expect to be a low percentage free and reduced lunch and put that in Bryan Station, assuming those numbers will start changing by 2007.
Do you anticipate that the geography would be at least contiguous to where we are?
Yeah, but the geographic area that I'm interested in seeing would be the area, everything inside New Circle Road that's currently going to Bryan Station, send that to the new high school. And in terms of moving students, what's easier than hopping on New Circle Road down Winchester Road?
I'm all for it. Let's get that study.
Okay.
Scott, did you get that?
I did.
You know what areas you're talking about?
If he could zoom in on the area inside New Circle Road that's currently going to Bryan Station, we could figure them out quickly.
Okay.
Also really good job. That's the Southwest Street.
Well, I think they would. What we're suggesting here is, well, taking away from Lafayette.
No, taking away from Bryan Station.
Okay, all right. Just Bryan Station.
Just Bryan Station. Taking them out of Bryan Station, putting them in the new high school, and then finding an area where we're expecting growth and development to happen in the next few years and putting it in Bryan Station.
I mean, Lafayette, 30%.
I'm sorry.
Well, it'd be nice if we could put it in Lafayette, because Lafayette's at 30% free reduced lunch.
Yeah, but we're in capacity there.
Okay, so this is Bryan Station, this brown area.
Low because we knew there was going to be growth.
Right, right. But what this is doing is putting more in there now.
Right.
It would probably just about even out the capacities of Bryan Station and the new high school.
Yeah.
But they're both way under.
Yeah,
This is-
that
this
sounds
is-
about right.
This is Bryan Station. Oh, we're talking about Bryan. We're talking about high school. Huh?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And where's the New Circle Road? So the
Okay,
black
move
line
your
is the,
cursor down.
okay.
A little bit more to the left.
It's the road shaped like a circle all the way around the city.
That makes sense.
Just touched it.
Yeah, everything that's green inside that circle.
Okay.
It's not quite new anymore.
So all
All
this,
Circle Road.
and you want me to move this where?
New high school.
Okay. All right. So you want that to be, like, say, scenario C? Okay, if I'm correct, it looks like most of that's already going to the new high school.
Yeah, I don't think you got the area that I'm talking about. I can read you numbers if you want to turn on the study areas.
Sure can. Give it a second to draw, please. Let me make those a little larger for you.
All right, you see 592 and 593?
Yes.
Those and everything northwest of them.
To what point?
Everything that's in Brian.
Do you see the circular shaped road that runs along the north edge of 593?
Right.
Yes.
And that's
31 and 139.
and
31 doesn't include any.
31.
Where does that say industrial?
31 is IBM.
Yeah.
Nobody.
That's right.
Yeah, that's another. Couple of it.
Okay, so that brings it from Bryan Station from 1485 to 1253. So about 200 students are in that area. And let's see what it does to free and reduced.
%.
58%. So do you want me to run numbers on this? Is this actually the scenario that we want to keep?
It's 3 or 4 points. Yes, please.
Okay. You guys talking about this notch? There's 11 students in that notch.
There's 11 students.
Can we move that notch to Lafayette?
We sure can. I would like to anyway.
So then, ideally, that number would continue to drop if we were to put new development areas in Bryan Station. Something's going to have to go in Bryan Station because we've only got them at 70-something% capacity, right?
But do we know the demographics like you might have?
All the new growth area is located right around that high school. I mean, you don't want to move to the new high school.
Then what are we going to put in Bryan Station? We've got them 25% under capacity.
So land back to the station area, it's got
We already have it at 30% under capacity. Something's going to have to end up in Bryan Station.
Well, don't forget what we talked about earlier was,
Program.
redirecting programs to help that.
But Alan, also there is
Yeah, Jim.
growth potential in the Bryan Station, but it's already in the Bryan Station district, north of Masterson Station. So there's already growth there. When you achieve your goal of equity, the plan, there's growth capacity already in the Bryan Station district.
Is that your larger concern here, David, the actual capacity?
No, that we don't necessarily need to fix the 58% because some of that we're going to get to through growth and development because we're leaving capacity open.
We assume that. We don't really know the demographics of those.
No, we don't know for sure, but we can probably come up with some forecasting, which I think we've got coming tomorrow.
Well, you and Jim are doing that. Is that what I understand?
There are some numbers coming from the city and from my office that's going to allow Lisa to do some forecasting.
Well, I think that'll be valuable too.
And then
Just to be clear, I'm sorry, just to be clear, we're not going to be doing any forecasts tomorrow. Those numbers are preliminary, and we just have don't even have the 2014-15 students yet. It's going to take a couple weeks for us to use our projection process to do projections.
Yeah, I think we understood that.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, folks, switching hour.
Can I ask for something
Yes,
for the middle schools?
Sure.
Is there any way that you can do a middle school map that meets the feeder pattern as best as possible, but with the least amount of impact? Because I think this one that we have here is just following the feeder pattern, and it doesn't take into consideration the impact of how many kids you move. Can you make one that follows the feeder pattern as best as possible with the least impact on kids?
That's what it does make sense. I could see if I could tweak what I've done a little bit, but I really didn't move it. I didn't move a study area if I didn't have to move it. If I only moved study areas that were in different areas than.
Okay, and part of what I was, and I probably said this 100 times tonight, but one of the things that I was looking at is you have 39 students moving from Hayes to Morton, but then 102 more students going from Morton back to Hayes. So.
Well, yeah, because they were in just different areas of the district, and just let me put on scenario B.
Or just mathematical thing.
Yeah.
Anything. And, you know, in a perfect world, we may be moving exactly the same number of kids back and forth, but it has to do with where they land.
They may or may not want to be moved if it's keeping them with their neighbors or their elementary school that they want.
Yeah, I can assure you that there are lots of folks who want to be moved and lots of folks who don't. I mean, that's not an overall genius comment, but I've certainly heard. Okay, everybody. Scott and Lisa, for next time, we want to continue on this path of schools and feeder patterns, particularly given the new data that we're going to have, that we're hopeful will be in our boxes tomorrow. And, Scott, we'd really like to begin to have our conversations about elementary schools as well, starting next week. So we'll need whatever data you might have available so we can start working on scenarios there as well.
Okay.
Anyone else from the committee? I see nothing else. Vince, where are you?
We're adjourned.
All right, we're adjourned tonight. Oh, wait, no, we're not. Eli, we're not adjourned.
We're meeting next week,
Yeah.
and I can't be here. I apologize. But the next meeting on the school website anyway says tentative the 4th or the 11th, and I would lobby to have it on the 11th because I'm going to be gone next Thursday, and I'm also going to be gone on the 4th.
Well,
but it's not about me.
Yeah, none of those things are in stone. In fact, what we're proposing is that our meetings in December be on the 2nd, which is a Tuesday. And I understand that there is a conflict with the city in their holiday party, so we may or may not end up working around that.
And Equity Council.
And Equity Council. Well, that's later, right?
6 o'clock.
Yeah, okay. And the, did we say the 18th, Lisa? in January. Okay? And we'll let you know for sure about the 2nd, what we're going to do there. But whatever it says on the website about the 4th and the 11th, don't pay attention to it. What?
No meeting week.
Yeah, there's no meeting that week.
Should we look at that first? If equity council's in here at 6, we won't be able to turn the room around at that.
Oh, I don't care where we meet. The warehouse is fine with me.
Alan's got to turn on the floor.
Yeah.
Ron's got to turn on the floor.
The 3rd.
Is the 3rd?
We're always welcome to be at my place.
Thank you. Oh,
Brian Station.
Actually, I am available on the 4th, most really. I'm going to be out of town that next week.
Good.
Okay.
I'm not going to be here next week or the
We could
4th.
Skype you.
So, I'm going to be,
Can we go to, can you join us?
I'm probably wrong.
possibly, Baltimore on the 4th.
Yeah, stay for the 4th. Doug, does that help you? Okay, good. Ron, I think you're the outlier.
So,
Thank you, everybody, and to the public, thank you for your attentiveness and cooperation. I think you're right.